In any case, this inconceivable reality without mistake and release is the great natural equality. I think we got this far last time. It is the ultimate mode of abiding. So these three are mentioned a great deal, and it's interesting how Mipam Gyatsho doesn't mention them in their usual way. The most usual way is to say entity pure in essence, or pure from the start of the alphabet. Gada. Gada. Ga means, Ga is the first letter of the alphabet. So ta means pure. Ga, ta. Gane, takpa. Spelled, gata is short for gane, takpa. Pure from the first letter of the alphabet. So pure from the letter A. Over here is Khetsun Sangpo. Well, I looked it up and got it straight. He was born in Yakde, which is, he said, is on the border between central Tibet and western Tibet. Now, border, of course, doesn't mean that there were border guards and a strict line drawn in the soil in Tibet, but roughly speaking at the border, which accounts for his particular accent. And then next to him is Ngawan Lingden, who was the tantric abbot of Gyume. And he was born in Lhasa, and is not to be confused with another Ngawan Lingden who was abbot of Gomang, although he was in Gomang himself. But another Ngawan Lingden who was a Mongolian. And he is confused with him. There's a scholar in France who was quite shocked that this Ngawan Lingden was not the Mongolian Ngawan Lingden. Anyway, no big deal. And I put the two of them up because I'm trying to point out some marked similarities between Nyingma and Gelu. And Van Gogh just happens to be on the wall, and is perhaps as colorful as Tibetan paintings are as colorful. I say that the painting is done by Van Chen. In other words, undoubtedly, to my mind anyway, by a Chinese in Vietnam. Bought in Vancouver. It's lovely. So, Ngo Gada, entity, pure from the first letter of the alphabet, pure from the start. So maybe pure in essence, or essentially pure, pure from the start. I use both of these translations here, in the sense of being without any proliferations. Multiplications. Once they get started, they multiply. once you get started with ideas, conceptions, various types of dualities. Khetsun Sangpo often specifies them as apprehending subject and apprehended object, subject and object. And once these get started, they go more and more. They proliferate. I used to translate it as elaborations. It gets more and more elaborate. The same word is used in Tibetan when, for instance, a writer wants to say enough elaboration. I'm going to stop talking about this. I'm going to close it down. I switched over to proliferations for this situation. Multiplications, I think, is another good word. Just once you get started, pretty hard to stop, isn't it? Oh, this person is really bad. And you get one idea and another idea and another idea and another idea and another idea. So, ngo kata. So, ngo, entity. Entity, pure from the start of the alphabet. Pure from the letter A. You know? We should get it in English, right? Pure from the entity, pure from the letter A. So, you know, get it right into English. Entity, pure from the letter A. Nature, Rangshin, Hlundrup. This is like Khetsun Sangpo talking. Rangshin, Hlundrup. Nature, spontaneous. So this is what's inside us, but it's, you know, we tend to like point to this, but it's ends up being everywhere. But Rangshin Hlundrup, it has a spontaneous nature, able to manifest effulgently. That word's going to come up. But what Mipam Gyatsho says here is self-luminous spontaneity. People often translate self here as naturally luminous spontaneity. But the word is just self. Self-luminous spontaneity. And natural will come up in other places. So I choose just to say self. But it's important to notice that they rightly translate this as natural because they don't want to get this mixed up with something like self. It itself is luminously spontaneous. So Mipam wants us to know that it's luminous. And it itself is luminous. And it's luminous means like light, you know, like the nature of the mind. Because due to not being a mere emptiness, its natural luminosity is not partial. And what does that mean? Limited in extent. And it's not fallen into a particular quarter. It's not like here and not there, Um, there was a conference at Harvard to which scholar practitioners and and practitioners like the Roshi from the Zen Mountain Monastery, whose name escapes me, were the speakers. And one speaker indicated that everything was essentially, as is being said here, basal appearances, basically pure, except for things like radioactive pollution. You see, there were exceptions. So I made fun of him when I spoke, or maybe I just interrupted him, or when his question period came, I said, "Oh yes, instead of 10,000 dharmas are poor, it's 9,997." And everybody got my meaning. And he was not humiliated, but everybody got the meaning. So you see, that's what this means. Not partial, not limited, not fallen into a particular quarter, like everything except radioactive pollution. Like everybody except Trump. Everybody. All-pervasive compassion. Because, now look at the reason why it's called compassion. Because it is the source of all appearances of cyclic existence and nirvana. That's why it's called compassion. Every time this comes up, let's see what Mipam Gyatsho says why it's called compassion. It always stumped me. Now that's why I put in this quote from His Holiness, because he, in the note, because he ties it to something that has a meaning of what I would recognize as compassion in the third part of this, of his explanation of Ngo Rangshin Tuje, Ngo, entity, Rangshin nature. Compassion, at the end of the note, because its effect is compassionate activities. Risen out of the essential pure entity and spontaneous nature of the diamond mind. You see, Vajra mind means diamond mind. Diamond. You see, Vajra is diamond here. Unbreakable, unsplittable. We're so used to everything being unbreakable and splittable. But the Vajra as a diamond, you know, diamond saws are the best saws nowadays because they can cut through, what, most anything? So risen out of the first two come compassionate activities. Now, you know, His Holiness is brilliant. Now, is His Holiness making up something that, Mipam isn't all of Nyingma, but you see, Khetsun Sangpo taught me not all of, but a few of, at least parts of, the major texts of Longchen Ramjang. And I don't remember what I considered to be a a satisfying explanation of what this third quality of compassion is. Its effect is compassionate activities. Nagarjuna seems to say, he says, Dongyi Ningje Ningbojen. He seems to say, emptiness, which has an essence of compassion. In Geluk, this is not taken to mean that. It's taken to be that Buddha teaches to his highest trainees a path having an essence of emptiness and compassion, not emptiness having an essence of compassion. Well, when you just read the Tibetan words, and I've looked at the Sanskrit, well, I'll have to look at the Sanskrit again to make sure that the gender endings couldn't be read this way. But Tibetan looks as if it says emptiness which has an essence of compassion. It cannot be read that way according to Gelugpa teachings about the consequent school, because even those in the lesser vehicle realize the most subtle emptiness. And they don't practice the deepest form of compassion, even if, according to Jayan Sheba, they generate great compassion. According to Jayan Sheba, the lesser vehicle practitioners do not generate special great compassion. But as one scholar of Nyingma teaching said, it would be pathetic if the highest reality did not contain within it compassion. You see, and he gets that from the fact that this deepest reality contains within it all-pervasive compassion. And I still want to say to him, well, where is this explained as actual compassion? And I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. According to Chandrakirti, when you practice the realization of emptiness in company with the deepest level of compassion, you generate more and more and more compassion. So, I mean, there is a wedding, certainly, of these two, a conjunction of these two practices. But this version in Nyingma of the deepest reality, itself being endowed with all-pervasive compassion, is different. Its meaning, as explained by His Holiness, okay, I'm yet to see that meaning in a Nyingma text itself, but I'm not, the fact that I haven't seen it yet is not decisive by any means. I'm still looking. Okay, just bringing it to your attention. So, Ngo Ranshin Tuje, entity, nature, and compassion. So, entity, pure from the start. Nature, spontaneous. Compassion, all-pervasive. So that puts these three all in the order of Tibetan, translated all in the order of Tibetan. And there's no reason why these, the way they're spoken in oral teaching, there's no reason why there's plenty of reason why these should be translated. The oral teaching should be translated in the order of Tibetan, just as I did now. And there's plenty of reason why what Mipam Gyatsho wrote should be translated exactly as it is. And then we'll see down below how he brings up entity, nature, and compassion. How he brings those three up. Then, from the viewpoint of the purity, which Khetsun Sangpo explains as quiescence, pacification, but not pacification in the sense of having pacified all proliferations, but just that they are quiet, not having been made quiet, they are they are shut up. They're totally shut off from the start. You get my point? They never got started. Of all proliferations. It is the... Now, I translated this as basal element, but it's just element. So, viewpoint makes it look as if, you know, for the English, from the factor of the purity. You know, it isn't anybody viewing. This does mean somebody's viewing. From the side, from the factor of the purity, by way of the factor of the purity of all. You know, you can look at it this way. It's the element. From the factor of naturally effulgent luminosity, and he said luminous from within and luminous from without. Unimpededly luminous within, unimpededly luminous without, from the outside. What does from the outside mean? Inside and out. How could you be outside it? And if you couldn't be outside it, how could you be inside it? I think these are ways of speaking. Inside and out. You know, like we might say inside and out. It is self-arisen, pristine wisdom. In other words, you don't need any causes and conditions to bring it about. It's naturally arisen. It's naturally there. Other arisen would be by way of causes and conditions. By way of the factor, or, looked at from this point of view, but from the viewpoint of the non-dualism of the basal element and pristine wisdom, it is the mind of enlightenment. This doesn't mean the conventional mind of enlightenment. It's giving you psychologically evocative ways, avenues to stimulate your mind. It's an element. It's self-effulgent. It's not dead. See, we often look on emptiness as I don't look on emptiness this way, but as, what do you say, like an empty vessel? Dead or not doing much? But you see, as Nyingma then said in Gelug, in what sense is it an element? If you meditate on it, then all on emptiness, the emptiness of inherent existence, all sorts of wonderful qualities will be produced, like an element, you see, producing. In what sense is an element here? Probably because it contains all of these qualities. It is self-arisen, pristine wisdom, a non-dualism of the basal element and pristine wisdom, mind of enlightenment. Basal element is the factor of element. Now, nevertheless, basal element in Nyingma is the factor of emptiness. Mainly when the element is talked about, it's the factor of emptiness devoid of proliferations. Mainly what you're talking about is emptiness, just as it is in Gelug. And then pristine wisdom is the what are we talking about? What's the topic that we're talking about? The basally abiding mode of abiding. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So it's the element, that's emptiness. It's pristine wisdom, which is spontaneity. And these are non-dual in the sense of not being different. So it's said the element and wisdom are non-dual. Ying dan yeshe nisu me. Element and wisdom are non-dual. Very common saying. Ying dan yeshe nisu me. Yin, element, and pristine wisdom don't exist as two. We talk about them as two, but they don't exist as two. Now, those, in our class for the last our meetings for the last 5 years, Ngaon Langden, I've been saying over and over again, has used this Gelugpa metaphor of water, emptiness, and water, placed in water, water put in water. And he, being the performer that he was, he used to play something like a guitar and sing. And then he went on in the monastery to be the until some geisha, I presume, told him, don't waste your time doing that. You've got to become a great scholar. And so even in our house in Cambridge, Wisconsin, he would walk around the house. You see, in one sense, he felt he missed his calling, but he also became a great scholar and abbot of the Tantric College, which of course didn't mean that he did this. It meant he had to memorize a whole lot of Tantric texts in order to, he'd lead, but not lead in this sense. But he was still doing it in his old age. So he was a performer. So being a performer, he made this metaphor. He made this metaphor come to life by saying, well, you have 2 glasses of water, and then being a performer, he said, fresh water. Not one fresh and the other one kind of gotten old and a little silty. And you pour them into a bowl. And it's really good. You pour them into a bowl. You didn't just, he brought it to life. And he said this to me, a couple 100 times at least. You pour them into a bowl, and, where's the one from this glass? Where's the one from that glass? You see, in one of the glasses, he would say, this is emptiness. This is the wisdom realizing emptiness. And as you progress over the path of, before the path of preparation, and then on the path of preparation, these two eventually become like water poured in water. The consciousness realizing emptiness and emptiness become totally undifferentiable. This is Gelug. And in the text it says, like water put in water. Now, the experience is relegated to a metaphor, whereas in Nyingma, you're getting it at the beginning of the text. And this is the conceptual system is built on this. The conceptual system. Ying de yeshe nisu me. So then that means that emptiness and wisdom is going to have to be permanent. So this is going to be part of the conceptual system. Whereas in Gelug, Ying is permanent, Yeshe is impermanent. And then to convey this deeper state to the student, you use a metaphor. And if you're a really good teacher, you'll say it at least a couple times, and you'll really bring it to life. And you'll say it over and over and over again so that the klutzy student will take it to mind and imagine it. Nyingma's already got this in the vocabulary. Yingdan yeshe nisu me. So if you're going to use the words in Nyingma to, if you're not a, super dullard, you're going to, the words are going to evoke this, the conceptual terms are going to evoke this from the start. If you're not over, just using words. Which, there must be people who are like this, and I'm calling them dullards. As I am a dullard on many, many things. 90% of what I think. Okay. Then, these are non-dual in the sense of not being different. Tade me. Tade. Cool. Really nice. That mind of enlightenment, from the start, pure, the profound emptiness, and spontaneously established method and wisdom, is the triply endowed wisdom. Entity, empty. You can see I shortened this. Ngo Dongba, a little different here. Ngo Dongba. Nature luminous, with effulgence, in compassion all pervasive. And then he explained what pervasive means. Pervading all sentient beings. Fundamental mind, other people, as was said earlier, translating Nyingma as genuine mind. Why do they choose genuine? Because the dictionary says that Nyingma means non-artificial, not made up. And so a positive, non-artificial is a negative term. So non-artificial would be genuine. I see the term as, because Nyingma Plenshik Gebe Ursalki Sem is the deepest, or as His Holiness says, innermost mind. I see it as fundamental, and let's see if there's any support for my translation term. Not that I want to win out any game, translation games. Let's see if there are contexts in which fundamental, the meaning of fundamental is there. Genuine, no doubt, is there. And as I've mentioned before, I don't see the word Nyingma as being used in, I've not heard it used in the spoken language, but maybe it is. Fundamental mind, ultimate mind of enlightenment. Naturally luminous mind, fundamental cognition, Nyingma yi, genuine mind, non-artificial. Sorry, genuine cognition. You know, all of us get pressed for some other word for mind, cognition. You know, we have to use some other word. We just can't use mind everywhere. Mind Vajra, mind diamond, space Vajra pervading space. It's great. You see, this is something that pervades space. You know, even if we point to here, because you can find it here, you're going to find it pervading space. Space, diamond, pervading space are merely synonyms of that self-arisen, naturally arisen, not relying on causes and conditions. You know, it's something innermost, inside everything. But I think when you find it, it's not going to be inside. Once it's everywhere. Sounds like Brahman, doesn't it? Not Brahman, but Brahman. Atman. And so forth. Are merely synonyms. Blah, blah, blah. They do not differ in meaning. Just as it's said that there are many words for emptiness, but they all mean the absence of inherent existence. But this, remember, this is taking that complete mixture of water and water, which means the mind directly realizing emptiness and emptiness. So it's emptiness and the mind realizing it. So, and it's often said in Nyingma, nothing put them together.
Self-arisen sounds like inherently existent.
Well, if it's naturally always there, does that mean something in Geluk? Does that mean that it's inherently existent? For instance, uncompounded space is permanent, but does that mean it's inherently existent? Tsa! Finished. So that word tsar in Tibetan means finished, and then some other people say it means embarrassing. You know, that's said so often that it has no impact after a while. You know, publicly, it has impact only internally when you think about it. And so the public impact gets to be totally lost. It has impact only with those who are, you know, for the first year or so, first hearing it. So that's part of speaking loudly and then getting this thrown at you. And so that being publicly humiliated no longer bothers you, because there's so much fake humiliation, because people are immediately saying "tsar" when there's nothing wrong about what you said. So you get used to it. And then you are the one who decides whether there was anything wrong or not when you're sitting there. Was there anything wrong with what I said? Or is this person just carrying on? Anyway, then the next paragraph is, we'll leave the next paragraph for the beginning of next time.
Jeffrey, do you think that they use all this evocative poetry-like language? Because this is what's always confused me about Nyingma. It's like I can't relate to the language. It's too out there. It's too amorphous. So it's usually presented, and what is the purpose like that?
Well, it becomes non-amorphous and maybe commonplace once you get used to it, because it's the regular language. But probably, it's probably not probably. It's used because it is evoking the psychological state rather, it is more evocative of the state, psychological state, I would say.
It's more evocative of the psychological state
than more philosophical, technical language. However, if one takes the philosophical, technical language more personally, then it becomes, for me, for instance, very evocative. For instance, the first chapter of Tsongkhapa's Great Exposition of Secret Mantra is a technical argument, really. But when I read it, whatever language I read it in time, I'm sitting there in deity yoga because I take it evocatively. That's not true of all Gelugpa writing for me. But as Khetsun Sangpo said to me, it was something like, you take Gelugpa writings, you take this. We were talking about some Gelugpa nitpicky stuff evocatively, psychologically, meditatively. He was amazed. It's almost like saying, you take this crap internally. Because, he studied in Drebon, and he eventually gave up Gelug stuff because he found Nyingma more evocative, more to the point. In some material, something like types of reasonings, Daric. That's as His Holiness said, my mind went black. And I was greatly relieved because my mind went black when I was studying Daric. And even intellectually black. Yeah. Good day. See you in a week. Bye.